just gouged it. Gosh darn it. This is where that hard part comes in, and I am going to let these go. Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Melissa, and today we're going to be doing the next in my Declutter series, and it is going to be all of my eyeshadow palettes. I am going to say this is one that has kind of scared me a little bit, and I've been afraid to dive right in because I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes. I'm a collector. I love them. I'm inspired by them. So before you head over to that footage, if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. This is going to be a mix of some new, some old, but ones that are kind of in my current rotation, if you will. So one of the newer palettes I have is this Pixie palette, which is a collaboration with It's Judy Time, and I'm still working with this palette, discovering things about it. I think there's a lot of really nice colors in here, some warm, some cool, and great neutrals. This is definitely one I'm keeping. Next up is this Buxom palette. This is Dolly's Wild Side. I just recently did a Get Ready With Me on this and hauled it. It's a really new palette for me, and I think the colors are really beautiful. I think you can do a great neutral look, and then there's this little pop of color, which is fun. And one of the things I noticed about this after I bought it is one of the refillable ones. Another new palette that I recently picked up is this one from Fiona Styles, and this is a real new palette to me. I really haven't hardly played with it, but I'm going to very soon. I swatched it in my recent haul. I think this is a beautiful neutral palette, a lot of mattes, and I'm excited about it. The formula felt really beautiful when I was swatching it. Another relatively new palette for me is this one from Anastasia Beverly Hills. This is the Master Palette by Mario. It got so much buzz on the internet. It was sold out. When I saw that it came back in stock, I quickly picked it up. I have a little bit of mixed feelings about this one. I love the eyeshadow formula. I think this is some of the best eyeshadows that I've ever used. I do find that the colors tend to be a little on the warm side. And can an eyeshadow be too pigmented? Like, a couple times I've dipped my brush in and thinking it's going to look one way, and when I start applying it, it looks totally different. Like, I don't know. Hidden pigments, too much pigment. So I do like this. I do want to play around with some of these accent colors a little bit more, which I haven't done yet. This is still a keeper. Okay, still in the newish category to me is this palette from Sonia Kashuk. It's the Ion Neutral Matte Palette, and I have resisted buying this for so long, and I don't really know why, because it's pretty damn spectacular. If you can't afford the Visart nude palette, I would highly recommend getting this. These are fabulous. And then a little while back, Smashbox released a bunch of these little palettes that have these holographic tops for at least 4 palettes, maybe more. And I was interested in trying them. They got a pretty good buzz in the beauty community, so I thought I would go for it. But I have to say, first of all, they're much smaller than I thought they were going to be. Let's compare it to this little Naked Basics. It's not much bigger than that. So I was a little surprised by that. I didn't think that was the case. And I find the packaging a little cheap. You can't fold this all the way flat. It has to sit up like this, but it doesn't stay up, so I find it a little annoying. However, the shadows inside are really quite nice. This one here is the Soft Light Eye Palette. These lighter shades appeal to me, and I also thought they might appeal to Kate, so this is something that we could share. I've played around with this. It's pretty nice. They're much more pigmented than they appear right here in the pan. This one is the Golden Hour Eye Palette, and I think this one's pretty awesome, really stunning. I think this one and the Smoky Eye Palette are probably the two of the best. Plus side for a small palette like this is it's pretty awesome to travel with, and I feel like I say that a lot, like I travel that much. But when you're choosing makeup to travel with, I find that can be a little challenging. I also pulled out a few of my other all-time favorites, and I'm going to quickly show you those because these are all palettes that I'm keeping. And I'm going to start off with the Lorac Trio, and I'm a huge fan of these palettes. The first one I ever got was the original Lorac Pro. and I've used this quite a bit. I think it's still one of my favorite out of the entire bunch. I love the mixture of matte and shimmer. I think the assortment of colors is beautiful. I don't know what else to say. I love this one. The second one is this gray one, and it's a little bit more cooler toned, which I really enjoy a cooler toned eyeshadow, and I like some of these pops of color. And I pulled this out because I really hadn't, I used it when I first got it, then I kind of set it aside, and I really want to play with this a little bit more. And the last one is the third one in the series, and this one is very much a neutral bent. Some people were complaining that the colors got a little bit muddy when you started applying them. I don't feel that so much. I think there's enough contrast. Certainly if you're going to use these two side by side, there's not going to be much difference, but if you go from this end to this end, you're going to have some nice contrast. And I think there's some great one and done shades in here. The next palette, which is an all-time favorite of mine, is the Urban Decay Naked Smoky palette. I think this is quite fabulous. I think they did a good job of incorporating some mattes in here and some good blending shades along with some nice dark shades. And I think this is a pretty awesome palette. Here's an oldie but goodie that I hadn't pulled out in quite a while. It is the IT Cosmetics Naturally Pretty palette, and aside from being practically blinded by this shiny interior, I think this is such a pretty palette. There's warm and cool in here, and they're a nice like satin finish, so it's not totally matte but not really very sparkly. And if you own this and you want to kind of jump in on that bandwagon of the like softer pastel colors that are so popular this spring, this palette I think really fits the bill. I think you can use some of these lighter shades and kind of get that soft pastel-y look. And this next palette is from Laura Mercier. It is the Extreme Neutral Eyeshadow Palette. I picked this up around Christmas time, and I can't say that I've used this very much, which is why I decided to put it up on my desktop. I think these colors are stunning, and I really love the formula of her eyeshadows. Just love it. So because I just talked about the Laura Mercier palette, I thought I would go ahead and pull out this one, which was a holiday palette probably 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and this, I think I got it about the same time as I got the first Lorac Pro palette. I love this palette. I think it's awesome, and my love for this palette was really what spurred me on to buy another one. And as you can see, I've hit pan on that shade African Violet, which I think it's one of her best-selling shades. It's fabulous. Okay, I thought I would jump over and do some of the drugstore palettes that I have. And let's start with these two from Stila. So these are ones that I picked up because I thought I really wanted an all-in-one palette to travel with, and this was really the best that was available to me at the time. And I really liked this one here. This is the Not So Nude. I thought the assortment of colors were great for traveling, and this one is Stylish and Soul. So in the Not So Nude one, I wasn't too wild about this cream color for the cheeks. I didn't feel like it had very much pigmentation, and I didn't like the texture of it. But these are really old, really, really old, so I am going to get rid of this one. And I am going to get rid of this one, the Stylish and Soul. Next up is this Physicians Formula Shimmer Strip in Classic Nude. I actually really bought this because I love this packaging so much. It's so cute. But holy cow, these are so shiny that I hardly used them. I didn't care for this very much at all. So I'm going to get rid of this because I never reached for it. Didn't work for me back in the day. It's certainly not going to work for me now that I have even more little wrinkles on my eyelids. So next up is a little assortment from Wet n Wild. I picked these up when I first started my YouTube channel. So many people were raving about these as an affordable eyeshadow, and I jumped in there on that bandwagon. This first one is the Walking on Eggshells. I don't want to open it because it is quite broken here. And this was the one that everyone was like, oh, you must have this. And I didn't really care for it that much on my eyes. I didn't feel like the colors suited me very well. So I'm definitely going to get rid of this because I'm not interested in dealing with this situation down here at all. So the next two are Sweet as Candy and Silent Treatment. And out of the two of these, I really like Silent Treatment the best. But I do have all these shades in higher end palettes. So I'm not going to keep these. I'm not keeping any of these Wet n Wild ones, not even this classic Comfort Zone palette. I just, again, was persuaded to do this by someone on YouTube, I'm sure, and really the only usable ones are, for me, are kind of on this side. So next up are these three little eyeshadow palettes that came in a set. They are Ulta brand eyeshadows, and I was intrigued by them because they looked so much like the Hourglass eyeshadows that had that kind of wavy pattern, and I thought, oh, this is really awesome. I can kind of get that experience without paying the high price. I don't think I've really even used these at all. I think I was totally enamored with the way they looked. I think out of the two of them, these two are the ones that would appeal to me the most. This is where that hard part comes in, and I am going to let these go. So next up, I have this little quad from Maybelline. This is called Sapphire Siren. And I know why I bought this. I bought this specifically after seeing a tutorial by someone who was demonstrating that peekaboo hooded eye look, and I thought I needed to get a color exactly like what she had, which was kind of this turquoisey shade. This is what I was able to find. The reality is you can do that peekaboo look with any bright or kind of colorful eyeshadow, and I used this once or twice, and I'm going to let that go. So next up is this little trio from NYX. Wow, it doesn't really have a name for the palette. It just says Aloha, Mink Brown, and Deep Bronze. And I used this a little bit when I first got it, but again, I have other shades just like this in higher end palettes, so I'm going to let the drugstore one go. This one is from Mally, and it's a brightening eyeshadow in Lavender Glow and Plum Glow. And I'm sure this came in a QVC kit, and I probably wanted other things in the kit. I'm not sure these were something I really wanted, and so I never really used them very much, and I don't really care for the shades that much. So as much as I like Mally, I'm going to let that go. So this is a Smashbox eyeshadow palette specifically for brown eyes, which I don't have. It's the Photo Op Eye Enhancing palette for brown eyes, and I used this quite a bit when I first got it, but recently I don't really find myself reaching for it, so I'm going to let this go. Okay, next up I want to talk about my little round palettes, because I love them. I just love these. These are all by Tarte, and the very first one I got was this one, the Tarte, the Aqua Lilies for Tarte. Oh my gosh. I have no words for this palette. I still love this palette. When I opened it up, I almost got chills. And I'm sorry this isn't available. Someone recently asked me if I would sell mine, and I said, no. I am not selling mine. I love the packaging. I loved everything about this palette. And because I loved that one so much, when this one came out, I think I just took it on faith that I was going to love it as much. This is the Coral Crush palette. And I didn't like the selection of shadows as much, and I didn't feel like the quality of the blush was as good. And I'm uncertain about this, so I'm gonna think about this one, because I almost never reach for it. And then I've picked up this Rainforest After Dark palette after that, and I liked this one better. So when you look at these side by side, they're very similar. But I think the blush situation is very different. You know, this one was stamped with that Amazonian clay kind of logo that they put in most of their blushes, and this one was not. And I think I really noticed the difference. This blush was very kind of grainy, and I just like the colors a little bit better in this one. And I think I just answered my question. So I'm going to keep this one. I am going to let this one go. Next are these two more recent purchases from Tarte. This first one is the original Rainforest of the Sea palette, which is a very taupey palette, and I really love the shades in these, and I like the consistency of this shadow. It's a little bit different than their regular shadows. It's almost like a semi-gel formula, but I really love them. And then this was their newest release. This is Rainforest of the Sea Volume 2, and it's a little bit darker. It's just a little bit of more of a smoky look. You probably don't need both. I think, you know, if you want more neutral look, this one is the one for you. If you like a little more dramatic look, this one is for you. Or you could be like me and have both of them. Can I just say, this packaging is the bomb diggity. I love it. So when I look at this beautiful, sleek packaging and I compare it to an older palette that I have from Tarte where I liked the product. I hated all this extra packaging. Was just ridiculous. It was too much. So I don't remember what this was called. It's not on the outside. This looks like a wallet to me. And it's heavy and it's thick, but the colors in here are really pretty. And you have 2 blushes in here. I traveled with this quite a bit, even though I hated the packaging. But it is really, really old. So I do think I'm going to let this go. So next up, I'm going to continue along with some Tarte palettes. And let's look at this one. This is Golden Days and Sultry Nights. This was a limited edition palette. Kate and I shared. She mostly used it, but has since returned it to me. This is like a pretty summer palette, I think. I think this teal shade is beautiful. So I think I'm going to hold on to this. I originally thought I was going to get rid of it, but I think I am going to hold on to it. And how super cute is this packaging? This one is called Be Your Own Tartist. Basically, it had 2 color stories in it. So these are like 2 trios and a blush that worked for both. And this is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a nice neutral to travel with. And I think this packaging is really pretty too. So I'm going to hold on to that as well. And then this is a more recent release. It's the Tartelette palette. So this is the all matte palette that basically you can work across in rows. In rows to build a look. You can custom blend in between too, but I think this was designed to go across. And I'm pretty sure that these are all liner colors along the outer edge. This is super pretty, and I love, love, love this. So I did not have these organized in any kind of way, so I'm going to do a little backtrack here with another Laura Mercier palette. This was another holiday offering palette. I think it came out the year after the earlier one that I showed you, and you know, this is some beautiful colors in it, and this is like an all-over shimmer, just a really pretty cheek color. Let's move on to Bare Minerals. I'm going to start with this one. This is the Power of Neutrals, which a lot of people loved, and I liked. I didn't love it, I liked it. I don't know why. I didn't like all the colors. I think I didn't realize that they're like 2 quads, but I like the formula of this eyeshadow quite a bit. So I will continue to keep this because it is a great, handy little size. Then I picked up this one, which is a quad called the Modern Icon. And it was like a spring-summer release, and I used this a lot. I loved this palette. It's a beautiful spring-summer look and could easily translate to that watercolor look that's so popular right now. And then this was a holiday offering. I don't remember what it was called. It's not printed on the outside. And it is... So this is a row of eyeshadows. They're all pretty fabulous. And then down here is a row of blushes. And I traveled with this a ton. And I finally ended up putting it away because I was afraid I was going to use it all up. I loved it that much. Does anybody else do that? We don't want to use it up. But I'm keeping all 3 of these. Next up is this little palette from Sephora, and it's called the Moon Shadow Baked Palette, which has a lot of shimmery, glimmery shades. Probably can't be worn alone. I think they're all too shimmery, but there are some shades in here that I really love, like this green is fabulous with my eyes. I absolutely adore it. So I am going to keep this little eyeshadow palette. Next up is this little palette from Calvin Klein. CK1. It's the 100 Neutrals Redefined palette. So I picked this up solely because I have this single eyeshadow from this brand that is like a holy grail shadow color for me. This is shade 720 Evolved, like the perfect, like almost like purpley taupe color. The shimmer on this, the finish is awesome, and because I loved this so much, I thought, well, maybe I'll love this palette so much. But clearly the shadows were not the same quality, and I did not like it as much, so I am going to let this go. Alright, I have two more Lorac palettes. This first one is the original Unzipped palette. This is definitely all rose golds. It does read a little bit warm for me. I really wanted to love this. When I look at this, I think, I'm going to love this. And I didn't really love it on my eyes, but I think Kate loves it, so I'm going to pass this along to her. Then more recently, they released this Nude Necessities palette. I never heard much talked about this on this palette, and it is a very soft, neutral palette. I happen to really like it. I think it's a great work palette. Especially if you're in an industry where you have to be really careful about your makeup, like if you're a teacher or a nurse and there's some really high standards about how much makeup you wear, I think this would be an awesome pick. I think it was limited edition. It may not be available anymore. I have no idea. But there is a mixture of some shimmers in here and some mattes, and I really like this palette when I'm wanting just a really good neutral look. Okay, let's talk about these two Viseart palettes. Let's start with this one. This is the Paris Nudes palette. I thought this was such a beautiful assortment of colors, but I was somewhat underwhelmed by this palette when I first got it. I thought, I just didn't really get it. I guess what I didn't realize is maybe you need to match this up with the Neutrals palette. I thought, they're beautiful shadows. Are they worth the money? I didn't feel like they were. I feel like there's other shadows just like this out there that are more affordable. However, when I was recently using up my little Bobbi Brown cream eyeshadow, it was in this color Suede, so it's kind of like a medium brown. I loved pairing this shadow with it. I think it just gave these a little bit more pop, a little more definition, and I used it quite a bit as I was finishing that up. I'm definitely going to keep this because I spent a ton of money on it, but I think realizing that maybe it's good layered or paired with a neutral palette is the answer for this. And then shortly after I picked up that palette, they released these little Theory palettes, which were way more affordable. This one is in the shade Cashmere. You know, it's just a 6-pan palette. The pans are about the same size as the original, and one side is matte and the other side is shimmer. This is a great little palette. And actually, I'm going to stick it in my desktop so I use it a little bit more. I tend to forget about it because it's so small. Okay, now here I have an assortment of just miscellaneous brands, and I'm going to run through these pretty quickly. This is a nude palette, the Nude Mattes from Paula's Choice, and this is really quite a lovely palette. She released this before I think I ever saw anyone release an all matte palette in this nude shades. I think there's only like 1 or 2 kind of shimmery shades in here. Quite beautiful. I'm holding on to this. This one is from Japanesque. You've heard me talk about this one quite a bit. It's a favorite. I can't say enough about this palette. It's so awesome. I do think it's still available at Ulta. This brown is like the perfect brown. This situation here, oh, awesome. These are so fun to play with for a night out. Just love them. And you can get a nice neutral look for work if you don't mind a little bit of shimmer using this brown or one of these grays. And I like that they included 2 different grays. One's a little warmer, one's a little cooler. This is an oldie but goodie, the Stila in the Light palette. I've had this a long time. It's a favorite, and even though it's old, I'm going to keep it because this just brings me happiness. Such a great palette. I wish they would re-release this because it's such an awesome palette. So here we have the Too Faced Stardust palette from Vegas Nay. This is where my holiday palette offering disappointment began with this palette. I think it was at this point in my makeup collection that I realized what they release at holiday is not always the same quality as what they have the rest of the time. I hardly touched this. I was very disappointed in it. I'm going to pass it along. So let's talk a little Bobbi Brown. This is a limited edition palette from their Navy and Nude collection, which I loved this and still love it, and I'm going to keep it. It's awesome. It's got great taupes in here, navy, which is like a classic liner color. You can go shimmer, you can go matte. And then this little doodad is something that I just don't know where I picked this up. This is a classic eye and cheek palette. I think it's specifically designed for travel. These pans are so teeny tiny, and that blush is so bright. I have other travel palettes I like better. I don't know, I'm on the fence. This is so small. This is about the size of a business card, which when you are really pressed for space, this could be good. I'm not getting rid of that yet. Well, I'm thinking about it. Okay, so I have these two palettes from NARS. This is called And God Created the Woman, and this gives such a beautiful brown smoky eye. Oh, it's one of the prettiest brown smoky eyes I've ever seen. And it's nice and compact. Again, that whole travel thing. So I'm definitely holding on to that. And this is the Narcissus Dual Intensity Eyeshadow Palette. And some people really liked these shadows and some people didn't. And I happen to fall into the like category and just really find these quite interesting. So I particularly like this shade, which is Himalaya. It's a beautiful neutral. So this is a color that I actually bought in a single pan and use it quite a bit as like a brow highlight. And as you can see, I've totally hit pan on that. I'm keeping this palette. I like it. Next up is this little Sonia Kashuk palette, which is Jewel of an Eye, and it's all really deep jewel tones. I'm gonna pass this along. I don't hardly ever reach for it, and I have a lot of these shades in other palettes. Okay, so here is a palette from Marc Jacobs. I could just be happy looking at the packaging of his products. They're awesome, although this little hinge has broken. This is the Lolita palette. It's a great neutral palette. You can go dark and smoky. That center color is like a glitter top coat. So this is a good one to travel with. It's really small and doesn't take up much room. But I'm pissed that this broke. But I just put it back here in this little pouch to keep it safe. Let me know if you have any Marc Jacobs packaging. Did that little thing break on yours? I would expect it never to break. So here I have a few little miscellaneous shadows. This is from Kevin Aquan, and it was in a lucky bag, and it's Pebble and Smoke Teal. It's a little duo. This is actually pretty fun. I did a whole video on this on how to use a two-pan eyeshadows 3 different ways, and I thought it really came out beautiful. This in particular is a great combination. I'm going to hold on to this just because it's fun. I also got this in a lucky bag. Probably a separate year. This is the Natasha Denona 5-pan eyeshadow palette, and this is number 09. I was so excited to get this palette from Natasha Denona because I'd heard so much about these shadows. And then I wasn't too wild about the color combinations in this palette, and then I saw some really high, big beauty influencers open their lucky bags. They got really awesome shade colors, not a dud in the bunch, and I kind of lost my enthusiasm for that offering from Beautylish. Just bugged me too much. These are very shiny. I'm going to hold on to them for a little while longer. And then I have this little Too Faced Natural Eyes palette, which I think is a classic. I will definitely keep this as well. It's something I have to put in my rotation a little bit because I haven't used it in a while. And here's another Too Faced. This is the Chocolate Bar palette, but this is a great neutral palette, and I'm definitely holding on to it. All right, I should have pulled these out when I did my other Urban Decay palette, but I didn't. This is the Naked Basics 2. It's a little bit cooler toned, which suits me a lot better. This is a great travel palette. It's a great everything palette. And you can even use these shadows to fill in your brows. There's a color there that's dark enough to be a liner. This is pretty fabulous. I did have the original one. It's a little bit warmer tone, but I passed it off to Kate because she had gone through and used up most of hers, the shades in her original purchase. So I gave that on to her. This is the older Urban Decay Smoked palette. Gosh, I wanted to love this palette. This is a great color, Mushroom. These are okay. This is nice. These 3 in the middle here, when you put them on, you don't even see any of those colors. You just see almost a black. They really read black. And I know it's a smoky eye palette, but I would have expected those colors to kind of come through a little bit, but I am going to hold on to it. And this is one of the Vice palettes. Don't ask me which one. And I think this is awesome. I love the color selection here. I like the color payout, and just some good neutrals in here, some good brights. There's such a great assortment in here. Definitely keeping this. Next is Makeup Forever. This is one of their, I don't remember, there's nothing on the back. It was one of their pro palettes with little itty bitty pans, but I got this because I really wanted to try the formula. So many people had raved about it, and I like it quite a bit. I liked it enough that when this smaller palette came out, I decided to pick this one up. And this is all neutrals. I have a lot of neutral palettes. I should do my top 5. Let me know if you'd like me to do my top 5 neutral palettes. So these both are great. Keeping them. Alright, this is the last bunch. And they are from Kat Von D. I'm going to start with this one because it was the first one I ever picked up. And this is the Saint palette, the True Romance eyeshadow palette. The packaging is, of course, to die for. It was when she was still doing these little metal covers. A nice assortment of nudes. Then I picked up this holiday offering, the Spellbinding eyeshadow palette, which has truly delicious assortments, kind of done in pairs, or you can mix and match. Definitely keeping that. Then I have this little quad that's in the plum colors, and the matte metal palette, which, oh, this is the next thing I'm putting up to play with a little bit. Just love this. Well, I filled up my memory card filming that. I had to dump the footage so I could record this closing. So I started with close to 70 palettes, I think, and got rid of about 23, 24. That's about where I am, which is a lot more than I thought I was going to get rid of because I become emotionally attached to these things. And while I have a lot of neutral palettes, I love a good neutral palette. I'm always down for that. So I'm thinking I need to do like my top 5 neutral palettes. So I'm going to leave a little poll up here. Let me know if you'd like me to do a top 5 of neutral palettes. And I'll weed through them and get after them. How big is your collection? I have like 4 more palettes on my Sephora wish list, which I'm not going to buy all 4. But I could buy 4 more. Just saying. Thank you so much for joining me today. Leave me a little comment down below. This was a hard one, and I will see you real soon. Take care. Bye.